Okay, so we need to talk about this concept of the Hollywood survivor. I feel like we use that phrase a lot.
We do, yeah.
And usually, we're grading on a pretty generous curve. It's like someone had a couple of flops in the 90s, maybe a really public breakup, and now they're doing a guest spot on, I don't know, a cop show once a year, and we call it a comeback.
Right. The bar is generally set at they're still alive and employable.
Exactly. But
Yeah.
then you have the file you sent me for today, and looking at this timeline, honestly, it just doesn't make any sense.
It's a statistical improbability.
It really is. Statistically, the subject of today's deep dive should not be a beloved daytime talk show host. She shouldn't be a business mogul. I mean, frankly, if you look at the actuarial tables for child stars with her specific background, she should be a tragic footnote, in some documentary about 80s excess.
It's actually worse than that.
Yeah.
Because she wasn't just fighting the child star curse, which is, let's be honest, brutal enough on its own.
Oh, for sure.
She was fighting genetics. She was fighting a century of really difficult family history.
We are talking, of course, about Drew Barrymore. And the mission for this deep dive is, it's really specific. We're not just going to list her movies. I really want to understand the mechanics of this, the actual mechanics of survival. How do you go from being institutionalized, I mean, literally in a lockdown psychiatric ward at age 13,
Yeah.
to being named one of Time Magazine's 100 most influential people in the world in 2023?
It is a question of resilience, yes, but it's also about incredible strategy. And I think that is the part people miss with Drew. They see the flyer child persona, the daisies, and the relentless optimism. They miss the business killer underneath. We've got a massive stack of sources for you today, comprehensive biographical records, both of her memoirs, Little Girl Lost and Wildflower, and a lot of deep reporting on her media empire and her business ventures.
And there's some serious aha moments in here that I frankly did not know. I mean, I grew up watching her, but I had absolutely no idea about the whole quilt incident with Steven Spielberg.
Oh, it's a classic Hollywood anecdote. It's one of those stories that is equal parts hilarious and deeply revealing about how the industry saw her and maybe still sees her.
Or the fact that she was married to a bar owner for exactly 19 days. 19.
Incredibly 90s thing to do.
Totally. Or, and this is my favorite bit of like Hollywood chess, the genius strategy behind her taking a smaller role in the movie Scream.
That decision didn't just save her career at a crucial moment. It fundamentally changed the way horror movies were marketed for the next decade.
It's incredible. So we have a lot to unpack. Let's start at the very, very beginning, because you said something a minute ago about her fighting genetics. I think most people know she comes from a famous family, but I don't think they really understand the scale of it.
No, I don't think they do. To understand Drew Barrymore, you have to understand that Barrymore isn't just a last name in the theater world. It's a dynasty.
A dynasty.
It is the American equivalent of like the Royals or maybe the Kennedys, but for the stage and screen.
It sounds like something out of, I don't know, Game of Thrones, but for drama geeks.
It essentially is. I mean, she is the granddaughter of John Barrymore. Now, for you listening today, that name might just sound like old Hollywood, right?
Sure. Black and white photos.
But in his day, John Barrymore was arguably the most acclaimed, most famous actor of his entire generation. He was known as the Great Profile. But it goes back even further. Her great-grandparents were Maurice and Georgie Drew Barrymore. Her great-aunt was the legendary Ethel Barrymore. Her great-uncle was Lionel Barrymore.
Okay, so these are not just working actors. These are titans. These are foundational figures.
Exactly. I mean, Lionel Barrymore is the evil Mr. Potter in It's a Wonderful Life. These people didn't just work in the industry. In many ways, they built it. So when Drew walks into an audition room as a toddler, she isn't just Drew.
No.
She is carrying a full century of expectations on her little shoulders.
Yeah.
And the name itself tells that story. Her first name, Drew, was actually her paternal great-grandmother's maiden name.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And her middle name, Blythe, comes from the original family surname before they adopted the stage name Barrymore. So she is literally a walking, talking map of her own lineage.
That is a crushing amount of pressure for a kid. Just existing is pressure. And from what I'm reading in these sources, the home life wasn't exactly providing a stable foundation to handle any of that.
No, it was. It was quite the opposite. It was an accelerant. She was born in Culver City, California in 1975 to John Drew Barrymore and Jade Barrymore. Her father was also an actor, but he was deeply troubled. There was a long history of alcoholism and violence that ran through the family line, particularly on the male side. According to Drew's first autobiography, Little girl lost. Her father was abusive and essentially abandoned the family when she was just 6 months old.
6 months. So she basically didn't even know him.
They seldom spoke. She has talked about him more as this kind of looming, chaotic figure in her life, but not as a father in any traditional sense. So she was raised primarily by her mother, Jade, who was an aspiring actress herself.
Right.
And this is where the story gets really complicated. Because usually you think of a child star having a stage mom who is maybe a little too controlling, right? The hovering parent.
Yeah, the parent who's, measuring the trailer to make sure it's the right size and fighting with the producers.
This was different. This wasn't about protection. It was about exposure. Jade Barrymore treated Drew like a peer, like a best friend, and like a meal ticket, all rolled into one. Her career started almost instantly. She was in a dog food commercial at 11 months old.
11 months. She's barely walking at that point.
But the real breakthrough, the moment the entire world fell in love with her, was obviously 1982. E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial.
Playing Gertie, is there a more iconic child performance in cinema history? She was just so authentic. She didn't feel like she was reciting lines some adult had written for her.
And that authenticity wasn't an accident. There's a wonderful story about how she actually got that role that really highlights her innate ability to work a room, even at age 6. Her godfather is Steven Spielberg.
Wait, hold on. Back up. Spielberg is her godfather.
He is.
Talk about having the ultimate Hollywood connection.
Well, yes. And just to sprinkle a little more stardust on it, her godmother is Sophia Loren.
Of course she is.
But regarding E.T., Spielberg was looking for a specific kind of imagination. He didn't want a polished Disney kid. When Drew auditioned, she didn't just read lines from a script. She told him a complete and utter lie.
A lie.
She looked Steven Spielberg right in the eye and told him that she was the lead singer and drummer in a punk rock band.
At 6 or 7 years old, a punk rock band.
She described the band, their name, their tours, the whole fantasy. And she sold it with total conviction.
And Spielberg bought it.
Well, he knew it wasn't true, of course, but he bought the imagination. It convinced him that she had exactly the right kind of vivid inner life for the character of Gertie. And, well, the rest is history. E.T. became the highest-grossing film of the 1980s. It made her one of the most famous children on the entire planet, literally overnight.
And usually this is the part of the biopic where we see the kid, going to school, maybe dealing with some bullies who are jealous of her fame. But Drew, she went to work. And then after work, she went to the club.
Right. She hosts Saturday Night Live at age 7.
Hold on. 7. 7 years old, hosting SNL. Live television. That's terrifying for a seasoned adult comedian, let alone a second grader.
It is a record that, as of 2024, remains unbroken. No one younger has ever hosted the show. But what really stands out to me from that time isn't the performance itself, but a quote from Drew about that experience. She said, "Nobody treated me like a kid there." She said she didn't feel any different from the other cast members. She was just hanging out with the adults, listening to their jokes, being part of the gang.
And on the surface, that sounds kind of cool, right? Oh, look at her. She's such a pro. But when you actually peel that back a layer, that's really disturbing.
It is.
Because if nobody's treating you like a kid, then nobody is protecting the kid.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And that lack of protection became the defining theme of her next decade. The whole party girl narrative started when she was still in the single digits. Because her mother, Jade, would take her out. Drew Barrymore was a regular at Studio 54.
A regular at Studio 54 as a child. People talk about child stars growing up too fast, but this is an extreme case. She's dancing with Andy Warhol and the whole Studio 54 crowd before she can do long division.
It led to a very rapid, very public, and very brutal crash. By age 13, she was placed in rehab for the first time. But I want to be really clear about what rehab meant for her in this instance. This wasn't some luxury Malibu spa where you do yoga and talk about your feelings.
Yeah.
She spent 18 months at the Van Nuys Behavioral Health Hospital.
18 months. That is a huge chunk of a teenager's life.
And this was an institution for the mentally ill. She has spoken about this in her memoir, Wildflower, with incredible, almost painful candor. It was a complete lockdown situation. Padded walls, strict routine, no freedom whatsoever. She went from being arguably the most famous kid in the world to being a patient in a system that stripped her of everything.
And then even after that, at 14, there was a suicide attempt.
Which put her back into treatment. It reached a point where she just needed to be around people who were committed to sobriety simply to survive.
Right.
There's a fascinating, kind of bizarre detail here. She actually went to live with the musician David Crosby and his wife for 3 months.
David Crosby from Crosby, Stills, and Nash.
The very same.
So let me get this straight. David Crosby, the guy who is basically the poster child for 60s rock and roll hedonism, he is the stable influence she needs to get clean. That tells you just how upside down her world was.
It really highlights the sheer precariousness of her situation. So think about it. She's 14 years old. She has no money because it's all been spent or is tied up in trusts. She has no employable skills other than acting. And at this point, she is basically uninsurable in Hollywood.
So she has to make a choice. And this, to me, is the first real boss move I see in her timeline. She decides to fire her mom.
Essentially, yes. Emancipation. At age 14, going on 15, she successfully petitioned the juvenile court for legal emancipation from her parents. She got her own apartment.
Which sounds incredibly liberating, right? But then you think about the reality of it. You're 15. You are recovering from severe addiction and a long-term institutionalization. You are famous, but you're also a pariah. And now you are legally an adult living alone in West Hollywood, scrubbing toilets at a coffee shop to pay the rent because the movie offers have completely dried up.
It is the absolute definition of a sink-or-swim moment.
Yeah.
And most people in that situation would sink. The industry had completely written her off. She was considered damaged goods. And this brings us right to the 90s. This is the bad girl era. Because she realized something absolutely crucial.
What's that?
She couldn't be Gertie anymore.
Gertie was dead.
Exactly. And Hollywood has a very, very hard time letting its child stars grow up. They want to keep them frozen in amber as that cute kid forever. So Drew leaned into the rebellion. Hard. If the tabloids were going to paint her as a wild child and she was going to play the wild child, she weaponized the reputation they gave her.
And we see this almost immediately with the movie Poison Ivy in 1992.
A critical film for her transition. It was a box office bomb, actually. Made no money in theaters.
Yeah.
But it became this massive cult hit on cable and home video. She played Ivy, this incredibly manipulative, seductive teenager who worms her way into a wealthy family and just destroys them from the inside. Entertainment Weekly even ranked her character as number 6 on their list of Hollywood's greatest bad girls.
It's such a pivot. I mean, she's staring down the camera with this dark, dangerous energy, and then she follows that up with a movie called Gun Crazy, playing a teen who kills her abusive stepfather. It almost feels like she was choosing roles that were a form of public therapy, like she was processing her own trauma on screen for everyone to see.
I think that's a very astute observation. It felt like a public exorcism. She was rejecting that innocent image as aggressively as she possibly could. And this is the era where she posed nude for Interview magazine at 17 and then most famously for Playboy in 1995.
Okay, we have to talk about the Playboy issue, because this is where that Spielberg story comes in. And it just captures this weird, dysfunctional family dynamic she had with the industry perfectly.
It's a fascinating interaction between a godfather and a goddaughter, for sure. So she poses for Playboy. It's 1995. She's turning 20 years old. And in her mind, she feels like she's asserting her womanhood, taking control.
Sure.
So Steven Spielberg, her godfather, sends her a birthday present. It's a quilt.
A quilt. That's kind of quaint, I guess.
What came with a note?
No.
And the note read, "Cover yourself up."
Oh, wow. Okay, so that's a little passive-aggressive, a little protective. It feels like a dad joke gone slightly wrong.
It gets even more specific. Enclosed with the quilt were copies of her Playboy pictures. But Spielberg had his art department at Amblin digitally alter them. And remember, this is 1995, so this took some real effort. So that she appeared fully clothed in every single one.
No way.
Yes, like they'd put her in parkas and turtlenecks and, big ball gowns.
That's hilarious, but also it really highlights how he still saw her as that little 7-year-old girl from the E.T. set. He couldn't reconcile the two images.
He couldn't. And she didn't stop there, of course. This was the same period as the infamous David Letterman appearance. It was Letterman's birthday, and as a present, she climbed up onto his desk, turned her back to the audience, and flashed him.
I remember seeing the clips of that. She just did it on national television. And the look on Letterman's face was one of genuine, unscripted shock.
It was pure chaos energy. But if you look at it analytically, this was her way of asserting absolute control over her own narrative. She was shouting, "I am not your little girl anymore. I am unpredictable. I am dangerous. You don't own me."
But there's a problem with being unpredictable and dangerous in Hollywood.
What one?
It scares the money. It scares the studio heads. You can be famous for being wild, but that doesn't mean a studio is going to trust you to anchor a $50 million movie. They need to know you'll show up on time and say the lines.
Precisely. And that is why the late 90s marked such a crucial pivot. She had successfully established that she was an adult, albeit a wild one. Now she had to establish that she was a professional. And she did it with an absolute masterstroke of strategy that I think is still probably studied in marketing classes.
Scream, 1996.
The Wes Craven slasher film. Now, we really need to contextualize this for you, for anyone listening. In horror movies of the 80s and early 90s, there was a rule. It was the final girl rule. Think Jamie Lee Curtis in Halloween.
Right, yeah. The moral center of the film, who is usually the biggest star attached to the project, survives to the very end to kill the monster.
Exactly. It's a formula.
Okay.
So in 1996, Drew Barrymore is by far the biggest name attached to the movie Scream. She was actually approached to play the lead role, Sidney Prescott, the character who eventually went to Neve Campbell.
The final girl.
The final girl.
Yeah.
And Drew read the script and said, no, I want to play Casey Becker.
Casey Becker. Now wait, that's the girl in the opening scene? The character who makes the popcorn, answers the phone, and gets killed in the first 12 minutes.
Yes, and her reasoning was absolutely brilliant. She told the director, Wes Craven, that in horror movies, the audience always feels safe because they know the big star won't die until the end. She said, if you kill me in the first 10 minutes, all bets are off.
That's genius. It's the psycho trick. Alfred Hitchcock killed Janet Leigh in the shower 45 minutes in, and it traumatized a generation of moviegoers. Drew did it in 10 minutes.
It completely and totally destabilized the audience. When that opening scene ends and Drew Barrymore, the girl on the poster, the biggest star in the movie, is dead, hanging from a tree, the audience thinks, oh my God, if they can do that to her, no one is safe. It made the entire movie feel visceral and dangerous.
And financially, this was a huge risk for her, right? I mean, she took a massive pay cut for that.
Huge pay cut, much less screen time. But the impact was immeasurable. The movie made $173 million worldwide and completely revitalized the horror genre for a new generation. More importantly for her, it reestablished her as someone who understood movies, not just someone who acted in them. She understood audience psychology.
And this really set the stage for her next major partnership, which would basically define the romantic comedy genre for a generation. Enter Adam Sandler.
The Wedding Singer.
Yeah.
1998. This was another pivotal moment. She played Julia, the sweet waitress.
It's so weird because on paper, they seem like such an odd couple. You've got him, this goofy, sometimes pretty crude comedian doing his man-child shtick, and you've got her, this Hollywood royalty wild child. But together, on screen, it just worked.
It worked because of the contrast. She brought this grounding sweetness that completely softened his edges. She made him lovable, not just funny. Variety called their chemistry spirited, funny, and warm. It proved she could be the girl next door, a massive, massive shift from the bad girl of just 3 years prior.
So in the space of 2 movies, Scream and The Wedding Singer, she essentially rebranded herself from Risk to America's Sweetheart.
A brilliant 1-2 punch.
But she wasn't just content with, waiting for Adam Sandler to call for the next rom-com. And this is the part of the story that I think is the most impressive. She stops waiting for the phone to ring at all.
This is the rise of flower films. She founded her own production company with her friend and business partner, Nancy Javonen. And this is the moment she goes from actress for hire to boss. And we have to remember, in the late 90s, 20-something actresses were not starting their own production companies. That was for the Spielbergs and the Coppolas of the world.
And their very first movie was Never Been Kissed in 1999.
Which she starred in and, crucially, produced. It was a solid commercial success, grossed over $84 million. But the real game changer was the year 2000, Charlie's Angels.
Oh, that movie was huge. I mean, Drew Barrymore, Cameron Diaz, Lucy Liu, it was absolutely everywhere.
It was a massive global blockbuster, but you have to look at the mechanics behind it. It was a female-led action franchise based on an old TV property that men had always controlled, but now was being produced by a woman. Drew Barrymore was a producer on that film. She helped solidify her power in the industry. She wasn't just a talent anymore. She was signing the checks. She was casting her friends.
And she used that power in some really interesting ways. I was reading about the movie Donnie Darko. That movie is a cult classic now. I think every college dorm room in 2005 had a poster for it on the wall, but apparently it was in serious trouble.
It was dead in the water. It was this weird, confusing, beautiful script about time travel and giant rabbits. No studio wanted to touch it. The production was threatened, and Flower Films stepped in with the financing to save it.
Wow.
And Drew took a small role as the English teacher, really just to help get it made.
So she used the money she made from the big commercial Charlie's Angels to fund the weird indie art house movie.
Exactly. Without her intervention, Donnie Darko might never have seen a theater. It shows she has real taste. She isn't just chasing the biggest paycheck, she actually cares about the art form.
Which brings us to her quest for critical respect. Because even with all the box office hits, she was still largely seen as a rom-com queen. She needed that one role to prove to the critics that she could really, really act.
And she found that with Grey Gardens, an HBO film in 2009. She played Edith Bouvier-Beale, better known as Little Edie.
For those listening who haven't seen the original documentary or the movie, you need to explain who Little Edie is, because this is not a cute role.
No, not at all. Little Edie was the first cousin of Jackie Kennedy Onassis. She was this high society debutante who ended up living in utter squalor in a decaying mansion in the Hamptons with her mother, Big Edie. She wore headscarves because her hair had fallen out. She spoke in this bizarre, almost unplaceable patrician accent. It is a high-wire act for any actor. If you get it wrong, it's just a caricature.
And she completely crushed it.
She won a Golden Globe and a Screen Actors Guild Award. Rolling Stone called her a revelation. It finally proved, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that she could handle dense, complex, tragic material. And in that very same year, she directed her first feature film, Whip It.
I love Whip It. The roller derby movie with Elliot Page, it's such a fun, kinetic, joyful movie.
It received really positive reviews for its charm and its energy. It showed she had a distinct visual style as a director. It wasn't a huge box office hit, but it garnered her a lot of respect from other filmmakers. She was showing the world she could wear every single hat on the set.
And then somehow she manages to reinvent herself again for the streaming era with the Netflix show Santa Clarita Diet.
A suburban zombie mom. It sounds ridiculous on paper, but she made it work. She played a real estate agent who suddenly starts craving and eating human flesh, and yet she remained incredibly charming and relatable.
Which is the ultimate Drew Barrymore magic trick, right? Making a zombie cannibal seem like someone you genuinely want to have brunch with.
Exactly. But all of this, the acting, the producing, the directing, it was all leading up to her arguably biggest and most ambitious pivot yet, the move to daytime talk.
The Drew Barrymore Show. It launched in 2020, right in the middle of the pandemic.
A very, very difficult time to launch a new show. No studio audience, social distancing, all of those challenges. But the style was unique from the start. It wasn't just celebrities coming on to plug their latest movie. It was deeply emotional. She did these magic interviews where she'd connect with people from her past. It felt very raw. It felt like her.
It felt like a safe space, a little chaotic for sure, very emotional, but also very optimistic. Then 2023 happened, and that carefully curated, nice image hit a major, major speed bump. We have to talk about the strike controversy.
The 2023 Writers Guild of America, or WGA, strike. This was a significant crisis for her brand.
Okay, let's break this down. Because for a minute there, the internet really turned on her. And I remember seeing the headlines and being a little confused. She's a talk show host. Talk shows were technically allowed to come back if they didn't use written material, right? So why did everyone get so angry at her specifically?
It really comes down to the difference between the letter of the law and the spirit of the strike. And you're right, technically, her contract and the guild rules allowed her to host a show without writers if she just ad-libbed and didn't use a script.
Yeah.
Her public rationale was, I'm doing this to keep my crew employed. The lighting guys, the camera operators, the stagehands, they all need paychecks.
Which on its face sounds pretty reasonable, right? I'm the nice boss trying to keep the lights on for my people.
On paper, yes. But in Hollywood, a picket line is sacred ground. By going back on air, even without writers, she was providing new content to the very studios that the union was trying to squeeze financially. She was alleviating the pressure that the strike was designed to create, and visually it just looked terrible. She was announcing her return while writers were literally walking in circles outside her studio demanding a living wage.
And didn't something happen with audience members inside the show?
Yes, that was a huge part of the backlash. Audience members who showed up for the taping wearing WGA support pins were reportedly kicked out of the studio.
Oof, that is a bad look. That feels like villain behavior, which is so off-brand for her.
It was a communications disaster. The National Book Foundation rescinded her invitation to host their prestigious awards ceremony. She was being widely viewed as a scab, someone crossing the picket line, even if she technically wasn't breaking the specific rules of her contract. She tried to play the middle and got run over by both sides.
And then she tried to fix it with that video.
She did. She released this very raw, tearful video on Instagram apologizing, saying, "I believe there's nothing I can do to make it okay." It was unpolished, emotional, very on brand for Drew. But then she deleted it a few hours later.
Oh, the delete is always worse. It just signals panic and indecision.
It does. Eventually, she reversed course and paused the show's premiere until the strike officially ended. But it was a rare and very public misstep in a career that had been so carefully curated for decades. It really highlighted the complexities of labor relations in Hollywood and showed that even America's sweetheart isn't immune to reading the room wrong.
But she seems to have bounced back from it. The show is still in the air, it's popular, and honestly, the business empire she's built is probably massive enough to absorb a hit like that.
Oh, absolutely. She isn't just a host or an actress anymore. She is a brand. Flower Beauty, her cosmetics line that she launched in 2013, is hugely successful because it's high quality, but sold at mass market prices in places like Walmart. She has a line of wines, a homeware collection, a clothing line called Dear Drew. She even launched her own print publication, Drew Magazine.
And coming up in 2025, she's bringing back Hollywood Squares. That's amazing.
Yes, she's set to be the center square and a co-executive producer. It's another incredibly smart, nostalgic play. She knows her audience, and she knows they love that kind of comfort food television.
We've talked about the career, the trauma, the business, but we should touch on her personal life as well, because her relationships have been, well, they've been eventful, and frankly, they seem to mirror this chaos to stability arc that we've been tracking in her career.
That is one way to put it. Her relationship history is definitely a roller coaster. We already mentioned the 19-day marriage.
Jeremy Thomas, the bar owner, the story is my favorite. It's just so perfectly chaotic.
She was 19 years old. They had been dating for 6 weeks. They got married at 5:30 in the morning at his bar, which was called The Room. A minister she found in the phone book performed the ceremony.
What did she wear?
A white slip dress and combat boots.
That is the most powerfully 90s sentence I have ever heard. A slip dress and combat boots at a dive bar wedding at dawn.
And then less than 2 months later, she filed for divorce. She later called him the devil in an interview. It was pure impulse. It was a kid playing house because she'd never had a real one.
And then there was Tom Green.
The comedian, yes. They were married in 2001. It lasted about a year. They starred in Freddie Got Fingered together. It was a very public, very odd, very intense pairing. I mean, their house literally burned down right before they got married. The whole relationship felt like it was operating at that same high-intensity but ultimately unstable level.
Then she had her indie rock era. She dated Fabrizio Moretti, the drummer from The Strokes, and the actor Justin Long.
Those were very high-profile relationships in the 2000s. She was the cool girl dating the cool guys. But her most traditional attempt at domesticity, at building that stable family she never had, was with Will Kubelman. They married in 2012. He was an art consultant, came from a wealthy, very stable East Coast family. They had 2 daughters together, Olive and Frankie.
But that ended in divorce in 2016, and she's been pretty definitive about marriage ever since then.
She has. She has stated publicly that she will never get married again. She seems to have found a different kind of peace, a different kind of stability that doesn't rely on a romantic partner to complete the picture anymore.
And throughout all this, she's been very open about her identity. She has publicly stated for years that she's always considered herself bisexual.
She has, and she said something really beautiful about it once. She said, "I love a woman's body. Being with a woman is like exploring your own body, but through someone else. It just connects back to this fundamental openness. She doesn't hide who she is, for better or for worse."
She's also a vegan, apparently, and I read that she tried to convert Cardi B.
Reportedly, yes. She eats a plant-based diet and convinced Cardi B to give it a try over Thanksgiving one year. It's just another one of those examples of her eclectic and surprising circle of influence. She's friends with everyone, from Adam Sandler to Cardi B to officials at the UN.
Right, the philanthropy. We should mention that. She's not just hoarding the wealth she's made.
No, not at all. She's been an ambassador against hunger for the UN World Food Program for years. She donated $1 million of her own money to the cause. She is very active in using her massive platform for more than just selling lipstick and cookware.
So, bringing it all back home, we have covered a lot of ground here. From the little girl in the closet in E.T., to the rebel flashing David Letterman, to the mogul running a daytime television empire.
It's a story of survival, for sure, but it's more than that. It's a story of evolution.
So if you had to sum it all up, what is the big takeaway here? Why does this specific story matter so much?
I think the takeaway is that Drew Barrymore represents the ultimate Hollywood survival story because she broke the cycle. She came from a family, the Barrymores, where for generations the art destroyed the person. Her grandfather drank himself to death. Her own father was abusive and absent. She herself was institutionalized and exploited by the industry and by her own family situation.
But she didn't let it destroy her.
No, she built her own table. That's the key.
Yeah.
She didn't wait for Hollywood to give her permission to come back. She produced her own movies. She started her own companies. She created her own talk show. She took control of the means of production for her own career. That is the fundamental difference between a child star who fades away and becomes a cautionary tale and a mogul who lasts for more than 40 years.
And she somehow did it all while keeping a sense of humor about it, which honestly might be the hardest part of the whole thing.
Absolutely.
Before we go, I want to leave you, our listener, with one final thought that really stuck with me. It goes all the way back to that Playboy shoot and the quilt incident with Spielberg.
Yeah.
Years later, as a mother herself, Drew said in an interview regarding those photos that she would never let her own daughters make the same choice that she did. And I just find that fascinating.
It is. It's a real conflict, isn't it?
Does that mean she's turned from a rebel into a strict, protective mom? Or is it something deeper? Is it the wisdom of someone who knows exactly what the industry takes from young women, and she is determined to be the protective barrier that she herself never had?
That really is the question. Is it hypocrisy, or is it protection that's been born of trauma? I tend to think it's the latter. She knows the true cost of that kind of freedom when you're too young to understand the currency you're spending.
And looking ahead to 2025 and 2026, in a world of TikTok stars and fleeting disposable fame, why do we as a culture still root for Drew Barrymore? I think it's because we've seen her fall and we've seen her get back up over and over every single time.
She is the living proof that a second act and a third and a fourth and a fifth is always possible.
That's it for this deep dive. Thanks for listening.
Until next time.